Everybody, just making sure these work. Yes, okay. Welcome everyone to our Monday, September 25th regular school board meeting. Thank you for attending. If you have an agenda in front of you, you will see item number 1 deals with our strategies. Item number 2 is the meeting link where our live meeting can be found on YouTube. And item number 3 is a call to order. So, Ms. Steves, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Okay, thank you. I'd ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able, and remove your hats.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
You're welcome.
Okay, this brings us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We've-
Chair?
Second.
Yes, Ms. Moore.
Yes, when it comes to the policies in item 10, I would like to make a few comments. So do I have to, I'm assuming I can do that now since we're not voting anyway.
Yeah, we can do it when we get there.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
yep, not a problem. And those are just first reading, so.
Yeah.
Yep, okay,
exactly.
thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. We do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Boudreau. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, this brings us to item number 5, recognition, awards, and presentations. Item 5A is our student board representative report. So I will turn it over to the two of you. If you will, just make sure you introduce yourself so everybody knows, so people watching,
Yeah.
the millions around the world watching.
All right. So my name's James Silver. I'm in 10th grade. I've been going to Faribault High School for 2 years now.
James, will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Try to talk loud and into the mic as best you can, just so it picks it up good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So 2 Tuesdays ago after the meeting, we did a student board, district youth council meeting during school, and we really just talked about our norms and goals for the year. So that was pretty much all we did last 2 weeks. That's about all I have.
Okay, so I'm Jillian Huberty, as you all know. I'll recap a little bit of what James said. So last September 12th, we had our first district youth council meeting, and we kind of went over our goals and our norms. So our 4 goals for the year were, first of all, that we'd have a statement from a student be spoken at each meeting, or have statements for us to present to from the students at each meeting. We wanted to become known in a sense that so people and students would know more about what district youth council was. Our 3rd goal was community outreach, just more of a community presence. And then our 4th goal is youth engagement in the district setting. So whether this is having more youth on district committees and just working more together with the district. We then from there made 3 subcommittees. So the first subcommittee is board relations, and that has to deal with public comment. Board relations decided they want to do a voter registration drive to help high school students register to vote, because you can now register to vote at 16 and then vote at 18. So we wanted to do a voter registration drive at the high school with the upcoming election. The second subcommittee was school relations. And so what they did is they created an Instagram. So go follow it. It's District Youth Council. And they also had a fundraising idea, which was Boo Your Boo. Not exactly sure what they're doing, but the goal is to fundraise money for District Youth Council to help with our community outreach and advertisement. And then the third group or subcommittee was the events, and they decided that we want to do a school board brunch. So on the Fridays that teachers have workshop days but students don't have school, we want to do a school board brunch or meet with some of the school board members, just so that way the students on district youth council can get to know the school board members better. Our next meeting is October 10th, so some of you will get an invitation to come to that. We want to have all of you come to some meeting at one point. It just depends on when exactly, how, and what works best for you. Besides District Youth Council, an update from the high school is we started homecoming this week. We had our Monday Pet Fest. We did coronation today. We crowned our king and our queen. Just super excited about that Pet Fest. I got to run it today. Spirits were high. It was very exciting. So go Falcons. That's all I have to say.
Wonderful, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for our two student representatives? Can you tell us who was
Yeah.
homecoming king and queen?
Yeah, sorry. So, homecoming queen was Ismarai Aria Lopez. I hope I didn't butcher that. And then homecoming king was Christian Trujillo. They're both soccer players, so it was kind of fun. We got two people in sports, and they're both soccer players. It was awesome.
Wonderful, thank you. Last call, board members, any questions or comments for our student reps? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. I have a wonderful homecoming week. Big week. So, okay, this brings us to item number 6, school board public comment guidelines. I'll just read this briefly, and then we'll get into. I believe we have three speakers tonight. So, this is an opportunity for residents, business and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the presenter's table. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions, closed sessions, or special board meetings of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff members, even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information form before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic of their comment. All comments must conform to School Board Policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. Thank you. And just as a reminder, the board does not answer questions or interact during this time. We'll certainly follow up with people after if they would like to. So our first speaker tonight, Ms. Carolyn Treadway, and the topic is board practice/ethics complaint. Welcome.
I'm Carolyn Treadway. I'm a resident of Faribault and a former board member. As you know, I lodged a formal ethics complaint against board member Linda Boudreau on September 5th. I am disappointed that this issue is not on tonight's agenda. Therefore, this is the gist of that complaint. On August 21st, I expressed concern during public comment about the persistent use of school board business meetings as a platform to advance a political agenda by one member of the board. Ms. Boudreau interrupted my comments with an assertion that my observations shouldn't be allowed. Chairperson Wolf clarified that as elected officials, Policy 206 does not protect school board members. Indeed, Mrs. Boudreau's interruption failed to adhere to the longstanding protocol that prohibits board members from interacting with making public comment, with a person making public comment. While that interruption doesn't rise to the level of a breach of ethics, clarification is needed whether members of the public can request feedback during public comment. If it's fair for a board member, the same privilege should be extended to members of the public. That inappropriate interruption aside, my ethics complaint is about Ms. Boudreau's comment after Mr. Wolf's clarification. She pointed directly at me and asserted, "This person presenting also has a political view." That statement was intended to discredit me and my observations and should have been ruled out of order. Her attempt to discredit me with that statement infringed on the Faribault School Board Code of Ethics Policy 209, to which all board members have pledged to comply. Additionally, Policy 209 prohibits use of the school board position for personal gain. It is indisputable that one or more members of the current school board are persistently using their positions for personal political gain. It conflicts with the Faribault Public School Board Code of Ethics, to which all board members pledge. The specific code reads, as a member of the school board, I will listen to the opinion and views of others, including, but not limited to, other school board members, administration, staff, students, and community members. And secondly, avoid conflicts of interest and refrain from using my school board position for personal gain. Ms. Boudreau's actions violated her sworn obligation to the Code of Ethics. I respectfully ask that in the future, the board chair and/or parliamentarian ensure that Ms. Boudreau and all members of the board comply with the Code of Ethics to which you have pledged.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, I'm going to try to keep everybody as close to 3 minutes as possible. Our next speaker, Ms. Mary Hackett, and the topic is school library books.
All right. Hi, my name is Mary Hackett, and I'm back to talk about another book available to high school students through our Faribault High School Library. As a reminder, I'm not advocating for censorship, book banning, or book burning, but books made available through the school system should be carefully curated to avoid creating conditions in which young people can be groomed for sexual abuse. As I've said before, according to RAINN, the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the USA, one of the methods groomers use is, quote, discussion of sexual topics. Abusers may show the victim pornography or discuss sexual topics with them to introduce the idea of sexual contact. While sex education is necessary, the content I am about to read is not that. This is from a 2012 book called Tilt, written by Ellen Hopkins. Here are a few excerpts. This content is very explicit, so I would advise any minors present to leave the room. Page 55. I might not have said anything about the bleeding or the chokehold welts around my neck. I wept over his promise to kill my sister if I told, but a blood test for mono turned up something we couldn't ignore. Stu passed on his HIV to his completely queer, but up until then virgin stepnephew, me. Page 71. We rock together in rhythm. 1. As he starts to tense, I remind him with a subtle lift of his hips. He withdraws just in time, slicking my belly. Page 301, this sweet little thing has a rockin' bod, and the best thing about it is I'm betting it's virgin territory. She's pure as snowmelt, despite all the ass waving going on, and unmarked girls are a raging turn-on. Page 431, Lucas texts instructions. Get naked and lie down on your bed. I keep my panties on. As far as he knows, I'm still on my period. Play with your nipple. Get it hard. I want a pic. I try to make it sexy like the girl in that movie. I wait for another text. It doesn't take long. Beautiful. This is awesome. Touch yourself. You know where. Let me see. The rest of the scene goes on to describe the girl masturbating for the first time in a wealth of detail. Want to fuck all day like a Viagra poster boy, and I can't fuck because when I try, all I do is cry. I lead her into the bedroom, barely get her onto the bed when her lights snuff out. If I happen to be a gentleman, or maybe a little less drunk myself, the sight of her lying there, skirt pulled up over her thighs, panties teasing a major throbbing boner, would maybe not tempt me to take her this way, but she's a sweet little piece of virgin meat, and I've waited patiently. The first turn belongs to me, and this is a prime chance to take it. I climb up beside her, tug off the baby blue lace, fling it away. Her breath is hot, and her skin is hot, and between her legs it is wet and hot, and the resistance lasts only a moment. Profanity count. Bitch, 12. Fuck, 26. Piss, 17. Shit, 23. Faribault Public Schools provides a high-quality and equitable education that nurtures, inspires, challenges, and empowers all students to engage and grow as learners and citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Hackett. Our next speaker this evening, and I think third and final, according to what we have so far, Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we'll do this one next and then the final one. Mr. Tom Moline, I believe Policy Committee item 10B2, is that what I'm seeing here? Does that sound right?
It's a long reference.
Okay.
I'll go through it quickly.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Moline. I'm a Faribault resident, and I'm addressing you tonight regarding a policy committee, item 10. It's XB2 Policy 907, Energy Efficiency. Item 3, Responsibilities. Item B, the Director of Facilities and Grounds, down to item 16, which is the renewable energy to include but not limited to solar and wind energy. A casual overview of the school district policies reveals an enormous panorama of overreach that should give everyone pause. The aforementioned item 16 underscores the distractions and diversions that overpopulate government school policy. It's not the job or the responsibility of the school board to compete in the energy sector. A fair evaluation of the renewable energy promise of wind and solar seems to be lacking in our public discourse. The profits of climate change, global warming, and the sky is falling are in reality profiteers enjoying 30% government subsidies on the front end from a government that is $33 trillion in debt, while destroying the environment they claim to be saving. Thanks in part to green energy, there are now more slaves on the earth than ever in the history of humankind. It's not the school board's responsibility to solve the world's problems. School boards should provide educational opportunities to students that provide basic skills in reading, writing, math, science, and civic responsibilities. The overarching goal should be to be the development of critical thinking skills that prepare and equip our children to study, engage, and solve the problems that vex humanity on this earth. I would recommend that we purchase the power for required by our schools from the professionals in the industry on the systems that are already in place. I thank you for your patience and for your service and attention. And I would request, and each of you have received a copy of this in email, I would request unanimous consent that I could provide these additional lists of contacts are in this email and information about supporting documentation to anyone from the press or anyone from the public would like to see further information on this statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we have one more speaker. Do you know who it is? Mr. Steinkamp. Good evening, Mr. Steinkamp.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies for being a little late here. But it's on the whole concept of book banning or limiting books. Hello, I'm Roger Steinkamp. And instead of banning books, we should be adding perspectives to our library. I'm a bit wary of the angry mama bears decrying how our books are corrupting our youth and obsessing on sex, communists, and socialists. I guess I'm the angry puka of Irish myth. White nationalism is nothing new to Faribault. How many of you have read a book about the Dakota perspective of the War of 1862? Different perspective. How many of you have read about the prominence of the KKK in Faribault in the 1920s? And this is written by a history teacher in the Twin Cities. If your family was here in the 1920s, chances are 50-50 they were members of the Klan. Does this change our understanding? Well, it should. I felt bad when I came upon an understanding of the Dakota perspective, even though I grew up near the Lower Sioux Agency. The mama bears aren't protecting our kids, but promoting their own ideology. And the more we know, the better we can understand who we are and how we relate to our community. That's even biblical. Knowledge is a principal thing, therefore get knowledge, but with all you're getting, get understanding. Are these subjects too complicated for youth? No, they already know in just a few seconds on Mr. Google, and will flood them with all the information that's being limited or banned. My French brother-in-law, a well-known children's book author, wrote a book, or his latest book is entitled, "Papa, Why Did You Vote for Hitler?" And the book provokes thought for kids as well as adults. So I guess my perspective is, let's expand, keep in mind, let's expand perspectives that children are exposed to and read. It'll help them understand who we are.
Thank you, Mr. Steinkamp. Okay, that concludes our community comment for this evening. That brings us to item number 7, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I'm sorry, you made the motion?
If no one made a motion, I'll make one.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, if I missed the motion, I apologize. I didn't hear anything. So, okay, we have a motion by Ms. Boudreau and a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Just as a reminder to our public, consent agenda, we do not have any discussion on those items. That's why we skipped that there. So, this brings us to item number 8, retirements. 8A is the retirement of Mary Ford, 15 and a half years service here in our district. I will entertain a motion to approve Mary's retirement.
So move. Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau and a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank Mary for 15 and a half years of service here in Faribault Public Schools, a fairly lengthy amount of time, and her dedication to the district and the kids of Faribault.
Any other comments, discussion?
I wish to thank her as well. We all should. I'm sure we all do.
Thank you. I'll just piggyback on the comments by Mr. Bellingham and Ms. Boudreau. Ms. Ford, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we wish you nothing but the best in all your future endeavors, so thank you. Okay. Having a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 8B, consider approval of retirement of Mary Nelson, 32 years of service.
Mr. Chair, also move approval. Sorry if I butted in earlier.
You're good. We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to thank Mary. 32 years. During my teaching career, I was able to work with Mary as outstanding paraprofessional. I was also fortunate to have her 2 children, which she sent in 6th grade. So when she sent to the Faribault Public Schools as well. So a real dedicated employee and outstanding person and family. So I want to thank Mary for her 32 years of service in Faribault Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Any other comments? Okay, I will once again piggyback on Mr. Bellingham's comments. And Mary, thank you for your 32 years, and we wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, dittos.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Dittos.
All right,
That's a lot
hearing
of
no
years.
further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, thank you. This brings us to item number 9, the finance. Mr. Gertis is somewhere here in the room. You want to make your way to the table, if you will, from Heighton back there in the corner. Item 9A is the minutes from our August 14th meeting. And then item 9B, Mr. Gertis will give us some reports here. Welcome, Mr. Gertis. How are you this evening?
Great.
Good.
Good evening, everybody. So just a couple reports. Want to first start in by just mentioning that thanking my team. Our audit is getting very close to being finished. Some of you had the pleasure of being drug into the office and being questioned for hours on end by the auditors, and we didn't even get in trouble for that. So I appreciate that. So in October meeting, we should be bringing around and getting some 2024 data to the board since that year is now underway. What I have tonight is just to present some enrollment data. So the first report on the board agenda is the 23, I keep saying the final ADM number, even though it changes about every month yet. But the number that you see there that we're going to get paid on as of this report is 3,242.21 ADM.
Mr. Gertis, can I just interrupt real quick? Is anybody able to pull this up on the screen or no? Just so our audience and people can see?
Is that the little one? This is the one that's
Nope. Those I handed those out. It's
9B2,
I
Ms.
can't
Averill,
read it from
9B2.
here, but
Yep.
right
That
down.
one.
There
Thank
go.
you. Thank you.
And then blow it up as best you can. The other way.
If you go to that X in the upper right, there you go. If you want to make it bigger, you can move back to the left, up there there you go. Thank you.
So the number I'm referencing is in the bottom right-hand corner. Sorry, Kathy, to make you move that down a little bit. So you can see the final number there as of this report, 3,242 students and change. The report that I shared with the board in August, we had 3,243.48. So we're down about 1.27 ADM. So again, pretty close. Auditors were very happy with that difference. They did not make us completely rework our entire revenue model. So very pleased with that. But just board note that we do get paid on the final number, and that number as of today is the one that I just mentioned in the bottom right-hand corner. The next report, while Kathy is pulling that up, I'm going to qualify that report by saying that the numbers here for fiscal year 24 are very, very preliminary. This report was put together on the 15th, so it's 10 days ago. A lot of things have happened, even in 10 days, but there's a lot of still shifting going on. People shifting schools, people shifting between the high school and online and ALC and back to online and then back to the high school, and you kind of get the gist, right? So a lot of things moving on. The PSEO population has not fully been entered into the system as of the time of this report. So again, very early on, but you can see the number again, bottom right-hand corner. We are 56 students below our budgeted number. Now, please note that that budgeted number does not have any entries in it for the kids that we lost to Surratt Academy. So as of today, they served 58 lunches at Surratt. So you can see between 58 and 56, that's pretty close to the difference that we have in the report in front of you. Okay? So again, please consider this very preliminary. I will continue to update the board at all their meetings here going forward as things kind of get tuned in a little bit tighter. So, any questions on that?
Scott, is there a significance with October 1st, or is that,
So
what does that actually mean again?
So October 1st is really a snapshot in time where the Department of Education uses those numbers to start generating a lot of reports. One of the big things that they use that affects us and our cash flow is that they set up the 90% payments that we get. So our Gen Ed aid is given to us at 90% in fiscal year 24, and the remaining 10% comes in the year after, fiscal year 25. So they calculate all those numbers based on October 1st head count, and then that's how our initial payments get made to us, right? But actually, those October 1st numbers have already been submitted. The deadline was last Friday, so just setting those head counts up. The last report that I have to share with you, just an investment report. I shared last month that I kind of thought we'd be pretty flat between July and August. I was a little bit off with that projection. So we actually have about a $2.2 million increase in our cash flow month over month, excuse me. So an increase there. This number will continue to rise now that our audit is over and we are able to completely close out fiscal year 23 from our draw perspective of all our federal funds. So that number will continue to rise between the end of September and again the end of October before we see a dip going south again towards the end of the year. Any questions on that? And those are all the reports that I have to share, at least at this point in time. Anybody has any other questions? Anybody? Kids?
Thank you, Mr. Gertis. Okay, this brings us to item 9B4, gifts and donations, resolution 24-05. I will read all of these. We've got a handful or so, and then I'll look for an I'll entertain a motion to approve. Excuse me. Item number one, donation number one, Faribault Rotary Youth Services, $10,000 towards the Little Falcons program. Faribault Rotary Youth Services, $2,000 towards the RISE program. Faribault Booster Club donations, the next four are from the Faribault Booster Club. $4,000 towards Faribault High School t-shirts for students. $4,505 to the Faribault Middle School for painting towards falconizing the middle school. $18,000 towards track pits for high jump and pole vaulting for the Faribault High School track team. And $819.80 to the Faribault Middle School for TRX exercise bands. The next handful of donations are all for the Nest. The first one is from Lexi Boyd, 4 bags of clothing, followed by Our Savior's Lutheran Church, $500, and $238.36, and school supplies and hygiene items. Next is followed by Greg Boyd, 6 bags of clothing, followed by Mayo Clinic Health Systems desk team, $350 to the Nest for school supplies. Ann and David Weber, bag of clothing. Lynette Boehner, clothing. Susan Pelkey, clothing. Corrine Bronstead, clothing. And 4th Avenue United Methodist Church backpacks, school supplies, hygiene item, and socks. All of those last items were for the Nest. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve accepting these gifts and donations.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would just like to thank all the people and organizations from the community. We greatly appreciate it. And so with that, I will, Ms. Steves, will you please do, unless there's anybody else who wants to say something?
Mr. Chair, again, a thank you to all who have donated, but particularly the Booster Club for not just this donation, but all their continued support throughout the entire and all that they do. So it's greatly, greatly appreciated, and I'm really impressed with how the Booster Club operates. So,
thank you, Mr. Bellinger. Mr. Olson?
In fact, I'll piggyback on what John said, is that it would be nice for the Booster Club to present to us, like, what have they done for the past X number of years? You know, just like a history, just a presentation to the board and, to the public of just how much work they've done, how much money they've donated over whatever the years. So,
Perfect.
Just an idea.
Mr. Olson, I might know a person that can help with that.
Who would that be?
One of our board members. We have a good group of board members. So, any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to recognize the Rotary as well for their donation. That's very generous as well.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. This brings us to item 9C, Items reviewed by the Finance Committee and are suggested for board approval. 9C1, consider approval of a physical therapy teacher contract for the fiscal year 23 school year. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to touch on here with this item?
No, it's just 1 hour a week of physical therapy that we're contracting for, so.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Any further discussion, board members? Okay, hearing none. We do have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to 9C2, consider approval of the preliminary 23 pay 24 levy. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, also move.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Boudreau. Mr. Gertis, will you come up and give us some education on this, please?
Told Zach I'd keep this to less than an hour, so please. So before I begin, hot off the press at about 4:45, it was published, was an update to all the levy. The state has been having some struggles with the levy process this year and fixing some things. So there is a new version out. So does everybody have a copy, a handed out copy? Now just note, I will get this updated on board book, but what is on board book at this present time does not match what you see in front of you now, because again, this is about 45, 50 minutes old, okay? Right, does everybody have a copy? Did I miss anybody when I was wandering around? Okay, all right, so we're gonna start with just some basic information for some of the newer members on the board and for some of those of you that have been around here for a while, and some of the steps here. So why we're here tonight and why I'm gonna stand up here or sit up here in front of you and talk for a while is it's that time of year again where the school board needs to certify the proposed or preliminary levy, tax levy for fiscal year 25. Okay, so I'll say that again, fiscal year 25. So how this kind of works is we are in fiscal year 24 right now, calendar year 23. Okay, so when Chad said 23 pay 24, we certify this preliminarily in September of 23. We have our Truth and Taxation meeting on December 4th, 2023, where the board will certify the final levy. Okay? The taxpayers will pay these taxes in calendar year 2024. And we record the revenue for these taxes in fiscal year, again, 2025, which starts July 1st, 2024. Now, there's a lot of dates, okay? All right, they didn't make it very easy. But I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to be referencing these dates. Does anybody have any questions on what I just said around the time frame of this? So note, what we're doing today is for fiscal year 2025, school year 2025. That's the most important thing to remember, okay? All right, what you guys did last December was for the year that we are in now, fiscal year 2024, okay? So I'm going to start by just hitting some of the high points. I am not going to sit and give my 2-hour speech tonight. Okay, I'll save that for December when it's cold out and nobody has anything better to do. Okay, but I'm going to hit some of the high points on this document. You should all have a copy of this. Kathy and I were afraid that we put it up on the screen. It wouldn't be very visible to anybody unless they're standing right in front of the screen. So the first thing I want to talk about is line 1, adjusted pupil units. Okay, so again, roughly a change of 100 adjusted pupil units from this year until next year. Now, these numbers are based on the enrollment projections that the board approved back in February, okay? And then obviously they'll be approving some more here in the next couple months. Adjusted pupil units are adjusted based on a weighted category, okay? So we don't have 3,363 students, ADM. They're adjusted pupil units, meaning that grades 7 through 12 get weighted at a 1.2 factor, okay? Some of our VPK kids get weighted between 0.55 and 0.6. Otherwise, everything else is a straight up 1.0. Okay? All right. So then if we move down to the first section. So first section, we talk about levies related to referendum market value. So for those of you who are new and those of you that forgot since last December, we have two tax basis. One is referendum market value. And you can read there that referendum market value is residential and agricultural based on the homestead and 1 acre. Does not include ag land, does not include seasonal cabins, and there's a lot of other smaller categories that aren't too relevant here that it doesn't include as well. The thing that I want to point out is the last sentence in that referendum market value is that the referendum market value last year for our district was $2.68 billion. This year it's just south of $3.1 billion. That is an increase of 15.6%. 15.6%. Okay? That is what our residential market value has gone up in this district since last year. Okay? So if we look down, we hit the 4 things that are tied. So our 4 tax categories that are tied to referendum market value. Our local optional, our voter approved referendums, our equity adjustment, and our transition adjustment, which again is relatively small. Okay, so those are the 4 funding categories that are based on referendum market value. Now, you remember from last year, and those of you that weren't around, I'll explain this. Inside of those 4 categories, we have a levy aid split. Okay? And I'm not going to talk a lot of detail about levy aid split tonight. We'll get more into that in a couple months. But the levy aid split is based on a ratio. That ratio takes into account total referendum market value divided by adjusted pupil units. So when our referendum market value goes up by 15% and our adjusted pupil units go down by 100, that ratio goes up. Simple math, A divided by B. Okay? Right? The higher that ratio, the more tax gets pushed to this district. Okay? As compared to state statute. And every one of these categories has a different ratio. But that being said, all of the tax portion of these have gone up because our ratios have gone up. Okay? So if we look at the first line, local optional, this year our state aid is $272,000. Last year we got $351,000. So just in that area alone, under local optional, taxpayers are bearing about $78,000 more just in that one area. You go down to the referendum, the state did make one change in the second tier of voter-approved referendums. It did not affect Faribault schools at all. We were a 1.0 before, and we're a 1.0 after, meaning that the 1.0 is 100% tax levy. Okay? You can see that there was a change in the adjustment amount, a relatively large change of $122,000 on line 4 of that first block. Okay? If you guys recall from last year, we had large adjustments based on inflationary numbers tied to our referendum. This year, those inflations, as they start creeping down, our adjustments start creeping down with them. That's why there's a negative dollar amount in that area. Okay? And so really, overall, our net tax dollars, based on our referendum market value, actually went down by $33,766. Okay? So I'm going to stop there, a little farther down the page. Any questions on that? I got to keep going. The kids are falling asleep over here. All right, any questions? All right. So then we're going to move down into our net tax capacity. So again, net tax capacity is just another assessed value. All right. These are based on the tax rates. And for those of you that are familiar with tax rates, there is about, I don't know, I never counted them, 50, 60 different tax rates based on the type of land you have and the value of the land that you have. All right? But the thing to note is our tax rates in pay 23 were $35.4 million. Net tax capacity for pay 24, $41.1 million, an increase of over 16%. So net tax capacity, which includes everything, residential, business, commercial, industrial, ag, all of it, still went up 16%. Okay? So it's following right behind the RMF, our referendum market value, RMV. Okay? So again, a couple things I want to point out. In this line, operating capital, same thing. Our ratios are going up. So our state aid this year is $309,000 compared to $378,000 last year. Again, about $68,000 difference there. Okay? If we look down at achievement and integration, that is one aid category that is not based on a ratio, it is based on a standard percentage split, 70-30. So again, that number doesn't change a lot year over year, i.e. a $6,200 difference year over year. Okay? I do want to point out our unemployment insurance and unemployment insurance adjustment. Those are relatively large. Because of COVID, we did not pay unemployment insurance for about the last 2 years. In fiscal year 23, we had a relatively large amount, catch-up amount that we owed for unemployment. And so you can see there the $137,000 that we're levying this year as compared to the $35,000 last year. Okay? Offset by $25,000 negative adjustment for what we actually didn't spend the year prior. Okay? One other thing that I want to point out, actually there's probably a couple other things here. If we go down to long-term facilities maintenance, okay, we have a shift in our tax levy. So for those of you that don't remember, this will be coming back up in a couple months as well. Board authorized to sell deferred maintenance health and safety bonds, which is scheduled to happen in January or February, date yet to be determined. Those health and safety bonds are debt. And so the aid we get from LTFM goes to our debt first, and our traditional LTFM dollars that we get every year is all levied to the taxpayer. So what you see here is that you see a difference on the long-term facilities maintenance of a positive $278,109. That is because the aid that we got last year on the traditional revenue has now shifted to the debt, which I will point out here a little bit farther down the page. Okay? Our leases. So we have a little bit more lease aid this year. And the reason for that and why the state is struggling with their documents is the state has reclassified our lease aid to subsec for their facility. And so now we received a additional lease levy bucket that covers some of that aid. So again, our lease levy authority went up there a little bit because of that shift.
Mr. Gerdes, that's a positive, correct? I mean, that's a positive for us.
That is a positive for us.
And do you have any idea if that will be ongoing, or is that a one-time deal, or?
It is ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
It is an ongoing reclassification of lease aid. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep. Shifting down a little bit, talk a little bit about community ed. So community ed is the one area where the legislature actually gave more state aid and shifted some of those ratios that I mentioned earlier to provide more state aid and less tax authority for the school board. So you will see under the community ed, main community ed levy, we are going to get more state aid by the amount of about $85,000. Okay? Some of that is due to the aid tax shift, and some of that is due to the increase in funding to community ed by another $1 and some odd cents per resident of Faribault.
Scott, did that come out of the surplus? They increased because of the surplus?
I don't believe that came out of the surplus. I mean, I don't really know that, to be honest with you,
With the
Richard.
community ed, I mean, we're still talking tax money, so basically, we're still paying for it.
We are paying less for it than what we did last year. We meaning the taxpayers of Faribault.
Yeah, but then it's shifted over to the state,
Correct.
and then we pay so really,
Depending on how you look at that, yes.
right,
One's direct, one's indirect. Yep, you're exactly right, Richard. Same thing that we look at down with adults with disabilities. Again, a new funding formula for adults with disabilities. Again, more state aid to supplement that by about $42,000. Our school-age childcare with disabilities, we look at those numbers. We have a relatively large adjustment from fiscal year 22 and again, increase in the levy for fiscal year 25. And then the last thing I just want to point out is the other side of the long-term facilities maintenance on the debt side under general debt service. You can see there that's where the offset is to our debt levy authority. Okay, so overall, if we look at this document, you can see our levy is going up by a total of $521,000, 4.44% year over year. And if you look at this piece of paper here, I think I should have handed this one out to you all as well. You can see the breakdown kind of right in the middle and the comparison year over year by fund. Okay, so you'll see the general fund went up 6.46%. Community service went up 1.53%. Our debt service actually went down 3.12% because of that shift that I just mentioned earlier. And again, total that you can see there overall, all funds 4.44%. The last thing I want to share just before I take questions is, all of this data that you see here and on this piece of paper comes out of about 40 pages right here of aids and shifts and calculations. So if anybody would like to read this, I guarantee it'll put you to sleep. So, that being said, any other questions or concerns with this? Again, all we're doing tonight is approving maximum for the preliminary levy, and the board will have final say at our Truth and Taxation board meeting scheduled on the December 4th, I think, if that's right. Got it right? December 4th.
and what number are you saying for the maximum?
The maximum right now today is based on this $12,255,000. Now, I believe this to be the maximum. All right, but if the state comes in and makes some changes yet, because this doesn't close for another week, this number could change. But I believe, as I sit here today, I am 99+% sure that maximum is going to mean $12,255,234.
And the percentage is,
4.44%.
so That's what you're saying, the maximum, but we could go lower, right?
We absolutely, the board can levy lower. If it chooses to do that, we have to be very careful that we don't under levy a category where we would lose the state aid component as well. So that would have to be very strategic if the board were ever to do that.
And Mr. Gertis, by going with, you're asking for the preliminary approval of the max. If that 4.44 went up to 4.47, that's why you're asking for the max, not a
Correct.
specific number tonight.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes. And again, I don't believe that to happen at this stage of the game, but there's a week left.
So clarification, can it go above the 4.44? No.
Yes. By voting maximum, if it went to 10%, not gonna, but if it did, it would be 10%. This number right here, I believe to be the maximum, but I cannot guarantee that with 100% because I don't control completely this document and these thousands and thousands and thousands of calculations that are based in this document.
So we're not re-voting on the maximum.
We are voting to authorize the maximum, whatever the maximum happens to be when it's all said and done.
For preliminary approval
For
tonight.
preliminary approval so that the county can put something on their property tax statements and get them sent out for calendar year 24.
Thank you. So we do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. We have a second by Ms. Boudreau. Do we have other discussion or questions for Mr. Gertis or Mr. Benty on this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Gertis. We appreciate it. Okay, this brings us to item number 10, the Policy Committee. Item 10A are the minutes from the September 5th policy meeting. And I would just ask any of our board members that are on that policy committee, if you have anything you'd like to share, feel free to.
Well, Ms. Steves, I think, Mr. Chair, I believe the minutes reflect what was passed and policies that were discussed and presented and passed from the policy committee as a recommendation for first reading here at the board meeting.
Thank you.
If Cassie has anything extra here.
Nope, you said it perfect.
And once again, there's no action on this. I would just ask, in the minutes, talks about, in the minutes, and I look at item number 4, with regards to policy 906. Can any of you or Mr. Benty just walk us through? That motion failed 1 to 6, and so that's a unique one when I look at this, right? Can any of you just walk us through what that policy is or what took place there or the conversation around it or whatever?
I think Mr. Benty has a real good explanation as he recommended not approval of this policy. So I'll let Mr. Benty explain.
Yeah, so policy 906 is not a current policy that we have. It was a policy that was brought up. It's a recommended policy by MSBA. When I spoke with, it has to do with predatory offenders and pieces that the school district would need to do. It is what the police department does already. So it would be simply doing over what the police department does. So when I spoke with the police chief, John Sherwin, he suggested that we did not need this policy, so I recommended that we did not have this policy for our district.
Wonderful, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments regarding the minutes, anyone, before we actually move to 10B? Okay, hearing none. This brings us to 10B. All of these policies, policy 720, policy 907, policy 908, policy 406, policy 427, and policy 620 are all for first readings. Ms. Moore, I believe you had indicated earlier you'd like to comment on one or a couple of them.
Just a couple of them, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have some handouts if people need them, but right now, I think we just have to think about, since this is the first reading, I'd like to look at the policy 907, which is energy efficiency. And I can just read it here. That was 3B. The Director of Facilities and Grounds shall be responsible for the development of a comprehensive energy plan that includes efficiency plans which address the following areas. And they added, we have it added, renewable energy to include but not limited to solar and wind energy. I believe this is probably laying the groundwork for installing the solar panels that we talked about a couple of months ago on the west side of the Faribault Middle School. Actually, I did quite a bit of research one afternoon, and I just think we need to think about these things. I think energy, that we have to look at new energy sources. I think it's a good thing to look into. I think one of the big advantages is that it's a cut in electricity cost. Electricity is going up, we know that. So it's a big plus, especially when we have to make budget cuts. But then there's always the initial cost, which is a big factor. And of course, we know in Minnesota, solar isn't as effective in winter, but there's the batteries. And then I went into the research on Better for Environment, and I did find some mixed results. I think the big pro is that, we save on the energy. I think that's really important. But then I did find a few things, and I didn't even know these things. And again, we just need to think about these things while we're, because I think we're going to vote in a month. So it's a good time to just mull it over and think about it. The wind turbines are non-recyclable. And, let's say have a lifespan of 20 years. I'm not sure what the lifespan is. But then they go into the landfills. So we got to think about that. And this is one thing I didn't realize was noise pollution. And I think the Minnesota Department of Health did a study on that, and I haven't verified that yet, that there could be a problem with health issues there. As far as the solar panels, we have to think about that. Some of them, they can contain heavy metals like cadmium and lead that potentially can leak into the environment, causing health issues. It's one thing we have to look at. But certainly, with more advanced technology, the likelihood that this would happen will probably decrease, but I don't know. But it's some things that we have to look at. I spoke to one person who said, and I actually called this person, who said it's perfectly safe, but at the same time, he also noted that most, if not all, of the panels are made in China. And he did say, I think there was some panels that were made in Alabama, but they couldn't compete with the Chinese. So do we want to trust China? Maybe with my clothes, but I'm not sure about the solar. So that's one thing we have to look at. There was also a study from the University of Rhode Island. It was a recent study that found that they looked at 400,000 housing transactions. And within 3 miles of the installations, property values decreased by 1.7%, which was about $5,800 relative to the control group. And then within 0.1 mile was 7%. And from this study, it said the regional property values decreased by around $1.66 billion. And then you've got the anecdotal reports, like what happens if we sign a contract with a solar company and then they go out of business. I heard that's happened before. In fact, just my personal experience, because we own some land east of town, some solar company was interested in putting some solar panels up, and we thought about that for a while, but then we ended up having too many questions, and we just decided not to. But those are the things that we have to think about, and because of these concerns, especially with the possible health problems and the property value issues, I do not think the board should have unilateral control as to whether or not to install the solar or wind on school property. I think any projects regarding renewable energy should be in consultation with the community having the final say. And that's my thoughts, just something that we need to think about. We've got probably a month to think about it and look into things. And I think it's good to ask questions and to look at all of these issues. And that's it for that. And then I have policy 406 is public and private personnel data. And on 3V point F point, or 3.5F, personnel data must, it used to be may, be disseminated to labor organizations to the extent necessary to conduct elections. You know, as I've always maintained, let's keep politics out of the educational system, and I think a lot of us agree on that. I don't think this is keeping politics out. I think it's definitely political, so I am having a problem with this section because of the political nature of the wording. And that's all I have to say. I wanted to just bring some
Yeah, no,
issues
thank
up.
you. Can you, I'm sorry, reference it? I was trying to follow along where you were
I'm sorry.
speaking.
Here, I can pan these down.
I thought you said 3.5A or something.
F.
3.5. Here, you want, John, you want to just pass.
406.5?
Thank you, Kathy. I had them ready to pass out, so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and this is just something that we need to think about very carefully, both of these policies, and we have a month to do it, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
And that's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any other comments or questions on any of these 6 policies in front of us?
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Benty, would you reflect on policy 406, what we just mentioned, that 3.5F? Because that's not the, when we went through policy committee, I remember you were explaining that, and I left my notes at home, but I don't believe that was the, which we had, I do remember you stating that something about labor organizations, et cetera. Do you remember any of that? I'm sorry to put.
I'm trying to remember that right now, and I'm falling a little bit short. So this will be one that I will need to get more clarification from on why the may changed to must. That would be a legal, if I'm guessing, that would be a legal change. So I did look down in the into the legal references, and I'm not seeing any legal reference changes. So what I'll most likely need to do is reach out to Terry Morrow at MSBA and find out why the may changed to must.
Because I do remember when we were looking at this, the information disseminated to labor organizations to investigate and process grievances, amongst others, not along that as well. So that's, I believe, is added new. Am I right on that, Kathy, with the, because it's new in red and underlined, so that would be new with that. So that's, I think, part of that. And then, of course, the Social Security numbers are not necessary to implement to that as well. So I don't think it was personnel data, if I remember right, Mr. Benty, not to distribute to the public, but just to those specific
Just to the
labor organizations.
Correct.
So it would be the unions who represent them or they're part of,
yes.
correct? Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, does this data only represent union members, or does it represent the data of all employees? The personal data, because it's addresses, phone numbers. I understand. I just could not find the reference in the statute. I've been looking for it, and
So our policy meetings are recorded. We could go back and review them individually. For this, would we take it out of the first reading?
And if the board has specific questions, then you can get me those specific questions, and I can get them to MSBA to get specific answers for questions. Because right now, we're just kind of trying to decide what it means to us, but obviously these are legal changes that have been in here, and it doesn't show that statute 179 and 179A have changed, but I think I would have to jump on the Minnesota House legislative website to see if those ones changed or not.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Ms. Buder, I think probably it would be members of that particular, I'm not going to assume, right? And they would probably have their they would have their address and phone numbers, email, et cetera, already. But the more I remember this, and I apologize for not bringing my notes, but it was mostly to the labor organizations that they belong. So that was, and I think statute changes what you said there, Mr. Benty, but something to look into. Good questions.
So, Mr. Benty, just following up on your comments, if somebody has questions, maybe they could get them to you by the end of this week?
Yeah,
So and then you've got
if board
enough
members
time.
have questions, if you could email me your specific question, and then I will pass that specific question on to MSBA to have them answer what it is you're looking for. And I can have those definitely by the next board meeting.
But also, I did not and still do not interpret this as being political, because elections do happen within the labor organizations themselves of president, vice president, treasurer, et cetera. So that's how I interpreted to conduct elections, not a general election at any point like that. So that's just my take.
Mr. Chair, and you mentioned, I think when I spoke to you about this too, that if someone in the organization does not want their information given over, they can request that? That's another question maybe I can email you.
That's another question you'll need to email me.
Yeah,
then,
because
yes.
it's kind of blurry, so thank you for looking into that. I appreciate that.
Okay, any other
Okay,
questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Olson?
Yeah, definition of must, is that equal to shall?
No. No,
So-
must means you have to. Shall means you are allowed to.
So what's stronger, must or shall?
Must is stronger. Must, that's what I mean when I say that these are legal terms. So it's most likely going to be me not only calling MSBA, but also calling our attorneys to say, explain to us what this exactly does mean. But I know from working with them in the past, must means you have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
And I thought shall was stronger than must.
No.
Could you clarify that?
May means you have the option to, okay? Shall means that it's kind of the same thing as may, that you have the option to or you don't have to. Must, you don't have, there's no option. You have to do it.
Is that different with my background with building code? Shall is strong, like you better do it. So that's why I'm questioning it, that, with must and shall, I mean, it's.
I mean, if you want, I can get the 3 different definitions between shall, may, and must from our attorneys.
Yeah.
Legal fees.
But I know for a fact must is, you have to do this, so.
So if they have questions, they'll get them to you?
Yep.
And you'll work them. Okay, thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions on any of these policies, thoughts? Okay, that brings us to item 11, other matters. 11A, consider approval of adult driver's education grant resolution 24-06. I will entertain a motion to approve this grant.
Mr. Chair, also move.
I'll second.
Sorry, Cassie.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? I know that there was a brief memo sent out. Mr. Benty, is there anything you'd like to address here that's not clearly stated for us?
No, I just think it's a great opportunity for our community to be able to have more funding, for us to reach out and be able to have more of these possibilities for our community, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I believe we're one of 3 districts to obtain, from what I remember, and even one of 3 districts in the state of Minnesota to obtain this grant. So again, thank you, Mr. Pruitt, for obtaining this grant very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hearing that we have a big shortage, and a lot of people aren't able to get their training expediently, and so this may be a great help for those students. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham,
Aye.
Linda Boudreau,
Aye.
Linda Moore,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Once again, Mr. Pruitt and whoever else worked on it, thank you. We appreciate it. So, this brings us to item 12, other items of information. 12A, school board members. I will open it up. The floor is yours. Anything you'd like to talk about or share? Or?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Olson.
An idea of holding here a public forum dealing with, I'll call it violence or something happening in our schools. We've had some concerns. We're only like 3 weeks into it. Be a public forum, special board meeting, televised, and have the public, concerned public, speak to us, and we can speak to them. But I think we have to talk about it and what we do with these students that violate the law.
Okay, thank you. So that's just a suggestion?
Yeah, just a suggestion that a public forum here, televised, and that at least it shows that we're concerned of what are we going to do about the weapons and fights and threats to our district.
Okay, thank you. Other board members, other comments? Floor is yours, Mr. Bellingham.
Mr. Chair, thank you. A week ago, last Friday, I was fortunate to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony at Jefferson Elementary, Jefferson School. Cassie was there as well for their new playground, et cetera. For the Public Land Trust, I believe was 3 members of that, one which I had in 1990 as a 6th grade student. It was kind of interesting with this, but just a great ceremony and dedication, and a very nice addition to Jefferson and Faribault Public Schools, and I can let Cassie talk about that as well.
Yeah,
So.
it looks like a beautiful space for kiddos to get some energy out, but also it's very natural and looks really cool. I know that I brought my own kiddos over there to check it out. So very grateful for the opportunity from the Land Trust to continue that work.
So thank you to Principal Jessica Lewis, who wrote the grant and was able to obtain it, and everyone she worked with, et cetera, with all in the Public Land Trust, et cetera. It was just really a positive addition. So a very nice ceremony.
Mr. Olson.
Also, this has been brought up for a while, but with the ALC with location, has there been any updates or any plans? It was discussed, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and it sort of died. But again, update with that of, are we going to do anything at all with the ALC or location? Or
I think this board gave Mr. Benty last spring some direction to, if I'll say it, I'm not sure I'm going to say it correctly, but I think to look at optimizing all of our buildings and their capacity, and that could include a reorganization of sorts, right? Mr. Benty, do you have an update on when you will be sharing something with us? And I don't know if that will include the ALC or not. I mean, you can speak to that.
So back in April, this board tasked me with looking at a possible reorganization of our district, not only based on finances, but also based on research. So that's what I've been working on over the summer and into the early fall here. I will have my presentation to the board, the first work session in November, to lay out, here are the options that I have come up with for the board then to spend November, December, and make a decision by the end of January on what they would like to do.
and this includes ALC.
This includes the entire
Every-
district
oh, okay.
reorganization, yes.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you, Mr. Benty. Other board members, any comments you'd like to share?
Mr. Chair? Yes, I just wanted to mention that we had the first meeting of the Community Education Advisory Council, and Cassie and Ms. Steves and Mr. Bellingham were there too. And Cassie Riopel, I think I said that right. I think she gave us a nice tour, and she seems very dedicated and well-informed. I should say the Faribault Educational Center for the adults. And she seemed very dedicated and well-informed, like I said, and I think it was gracious of her to give us a tour, so I want to thank her for that. I also had a meeting, lots of meetings here, the Faribault Ice Arena. I think Paul Froman is the manager. Again, he seems to be very dedicated and seems to know his job inside and out, which is good. And the only thing I can say is that from what if I can read my writing here, I think they're putting the ice in at September 30th. And also, we have to talk at some point too, we will be talking, we're going to have a meeting in November about the ice chillers repair and replacement. So we need to address that issue. And just the only other thing I have is I think I agree with Richard, what he said with, I think we need to have something a public forum or something to address this, because I think the public is concerned and we're concerned, and we need to kind of hit this. We can't put it under the rug. We've got to address it, and very soon, I think. Another thing too, I know this was the second time Ms. Hackett spoke, and she doesn't really, she doesn't, and I don't advocate banning books. That is unconstitutional. But I think we also have to do age-appropriate books. And anyone, I think, with any moral conscience would view, and I'm quoting, so close your ears, throbbing boner, sweet little piece of virgin meat. I think that is inappropriate for minors, and this is in our school system. I think we need to really address this issue. I know the Osseo Public School District mothers are very upset about some of the things going on, and it's just a matter of time it's going to get here. So I think we need to address it as soon as possible, and the sooner the better, because this is not age appropriate. And like I say, I'm not for banning books. That's unconstitutional, but there is age appropriate, and this is not age appropriate. And there are a number of books, I've been told, that have content like that in it. And that's all I'll say, but I think we need to address this soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other board members? I will just add a couple things real quick. As our two students mentioned, it's homecoming week. I don't know if every sport has a home event this week, but most do, I think. So I would strongly encourage board members, community members, if you're not busy, starting Tuesday night through Friday night, go find something to watch at the high school or ball field or Bruce Smith Field or whatever, or at the swimming pool. I know all the student athletes would appreciate more supporters. So go enjoy yourself and go root the Falcons on. And then last but not least, the Faribault Booster Club's hosting a fundraiser tomorrow night at Basilio's from 4 to 9. If you need a good place to eat in town, Basilio's tomorrow night, 4 to 9. I know they'd appreciate it, and so would the Booster Club. So that's all I have. Mr. Benty, the floor is yours, sir.
So yeah, I'll just tack on to what you said there. Homecoming week, our parade is this Friday. It starts at 2:15. So a reminder that there is a 2-hour early release this week, and school buses will run 2 hours early as well. That way our students can all join in the parade. So that'll be at 2:15, and it starts at the high school. Last Friday was our first PLC and Professional Development Day across the district. Well over 300 teachers received time to work in PLCs and professional development as part of our new calendar for the district. And it was incredibly well attended, and a lot of of good things happened on that day, and we're looking to build on those days in October and throughout the rest of the school year. So that was one of the, if the board remembers, that was one of our strategies that popped up over and over again to achieve our goals, was to be able to have this calendar and work on these pieces throughout the school year rather than just two separate times during the school year. So last Friday was our first one. And the issue that hopefully now is dead, hopefully, is the SRO, the school resource officer piece. This has changed daily. I know the board has received quite a few different emails from me. We have been all over the place with this. I need to say this again because the media continues to not get this correct. We have always had school resource officers in our buildings since the first day of school. Okay, the contract was not signed by city council, I think, until recently, but the officers have been in our schools since the first day. So, so that was one piece of it. Many districts across the state did pull their school resource officers. Our police department and city council chose not to do that. It does appear that with the latest legal clarification from Attorney General Keith Ellison, that or officers that have been pulled are most likely going to find their way back into schools, and that a special session will not be needed, but it will be brought up, it sounds like in February, by the legislature for either rewriting or more clarification around it. But it appears that this issue is now settled for now. So, and that, Mr. Chair, is all that I have.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Moore?
Yes, when I spoke to you, I know, I think we should commend our police chief because, you know, he said, I can't think of the exact words, but he said if anything happened to one of our students, he wouldn't be able to live with himself. And I think that's a very dedicated police officer. And I think putting the safety of our students first should be the priority of all of us. And I just commend him for that statement. And I do appreciate the fact that we are so fortunate to have a police chief like him in our district, within our district. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Okay, this brings us to item 13, dates to remember. October 2nd, 2023, 3:30 to 5 is our board retreat here focused on data education. So we're looking forward to that. October 2nd, 2023, 5:30 p.m. is our next work session here in this room. October 3rd, 2023, 3:45 p.m. is the next policy meeting here in this room. October 16th, 2023, 7:30 a.m. is our next finance meeting. We meet virtually. And October 23rd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. is our next regular board meeting here in this room. Before we make a motion to adjourn, once we adjourn, we will take a 5-minute session before we come back into closed session. So let's plan on coming back in here about 7:05. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
So move.
Second.
You can let her.
Give it to Cassie.
Okay, Ms. Boudreau with a first, Mr. Olson with a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.